It was the beginning of 2026, and I was sitting at my desk, looking at my small savings. As a university student, I didn't have a lot of money, but I had a strong desire to travel. I didn't want a luxurious trip or anything extravagant. What I wanted was a meaningful experience, something simple, safe, and carefully planned. In the past, I used to think that traveling had to be spontaneous to be exciting. I imagined people making quick decisions, booking last-minute tickets, and exploring places without any clear plan. It sounded fun, but at the same time, it also felt a bit risky. I realized that for someone with a limited budget like me, being spontaneous could easily lead to unexpected expenses or uncomfortable situations. So this time, I decided to take a different approach. I wanted my trip to be affordable, but also safe and well organized. I didn't want to face any financial pressure during the journey. I didn't want to arrive in a new place and feel confused or unprepared. Instead, I wanted everything to feel manageable and under control. I set 3 clear goals for myself. First, I would not exceed my budget, no matter what. Second, I would avoid unnecessary risks by making careful decisions. And third, I would still enjoy the journey and create lasting memories. These goals became the foundation of my plan, guiding every choice I was about to make. To make this happen, I knew I needed a practical strategy. I couldn't rely on luck or last-minute decisions. I had to think ahead, consider every detail, and make sure everything was aligned with my budget. This meant I needed to be flexible in some ways, but also disciplined when it came to spending money. As I sat there, I started to feel a sense of determination. This trip was not just about going somewhere new. It was also about learning how to travel responsibly. I wanted to prove to myself that even with a small budget, I could still have a smooth and enjoyable journey without stress. Of course, I knew that careful planning would be the key to everything. Without a clear plan, even a short trip could become complicated. But with the right preparation, even a limited budget could be enough to create a great experience. So instead of rushing into booking tickets or choosing a destination randomly, I decided to stay at home and begin the most important step of all. Planning every part of the trip in detail, from the destination to the daily expenses, making sure that everything was clear, realistic, and fully under control. Instead of rushing into decisions, I stayed at home and began to plan everything in a calm and systematic way. I opened my laptop, took a deep breath, and reminded myself that this step would determine the success of my entire trip. If I wanted to stay within my budget and avoid unnecessary stress, I had to be careful with every detail from the very beginning. The first thing I focused on was choosing a destination. I didn't look for a place that was too famous or too crowded, because those locations are often more expensive and less manageable. Instead, I searched for a city that had a reputation for being safe, affordable, and convenient for travelers. I read many reviews, compared different options, and tried to understand what each place could offer. I paid attention not only to the attractions, but also to the general cost of living, the transportation system, and the safety level of each area. After some careful consideration, I finally selected a destination that seemed to match all my requirements. It was not the most popular city, but it had a calm atmosphere, reasonable prices, and good public services. At that moment, I felt a sense of relief, because choosing the right destination was already a big step forward. Next, I moved on to building a clear and realistic budget. This was probably the most important part of my preparation. I created a simple spreadsheet and divided my expenses into different categories. I estimated how much I would spend on transportation, accommodation, food, and daily activities. I tried to be as accurate as possible, but I also added a small extra amount as a backup in case something unexpected happened. For transportation, I checked different options and compared prices carefully. I looked at both buses and flights, considering not only the cost but also the travel time and comfort. I didn't want to choose something too cheap if it meant a very long and exhausting journey. At the same time, I avoided expensive options that would affect my overall budget. This balance was important to keep everything stable and under control. Then I calculated the cost of accommodation for each night of my trip. Instead of waiting until the last minute, I decided to plan every night in advance. I searched for hostels and homestays that were known for being reliable and well-reviewed. I read comments from other travelers, checked photos, and made sure that each place had a clear address and good basic facilities. I didn't need luxury, but I wanted comfort, cleanliness, and safety. After comparing several options, I selected a few places that fit my budget perfectly. I also made sure that these accommodations were located in safe areas, close to public transportation, and easy to find. This would help me avoid confusion or stress when I arrived. Once I felt confident, I completed the booking for the entire trip. Knowing exactly where I would stay each night gave me a strong sense of stability. Food was another important part of my budget. I didn't plan to eat at expensive restaurants. Instead, I searched for simple and affordable places where locals usually eat. I noted down a few options for each day, so I wouldn't have to spend time looking for food when I was tired or hungry. This also helped me control my spending and avoid making impulsive decisions. In addition to that, I prepared a rough daily plan. I didn't want a strict schedule, but I needed a general structure to follow. I listed a few places I wanted to visit each day, focusing on locations that were free or low cost. I also checked their opening hours and distances from my accommodation. This helped me create a logical route for each day, saving both time and money. Another important step was saving all necessary information. I stored the addresses of my accommodations, transportation details, and important notes directly on my phone. I also downloaded offline maps, so I could still navigate even without an internet connection. This made me feel more secure, especially when thinking about arriving in a new place. As I continued organizing everything, I noticed a change in my mindset. Instead of feeling worried about my limited budget, I started to feel more confident. Every detail I prepared made the trip seem more realistic and achievable. The plan was not perfect, but it was clear, practical, and carefully thought out. By the time I finished, I felt a strong sense of readiness. I knew where I was going, where I would stay, how much I would spend, and what I would do each day. Everything was arranged in a way that reduced risk and increased comfort. It was no longer just an idea in my head, it had become a well-structured plan. However, I also understood that planning at home was only the first step. To make sure everything worked smoothly in real life, I still needed to take action, especially when it came to transportation. Booking the right tickets at the right time would play a crucial role in keeping my budget stable and my journey stress-free, and that was the next thing I was ready to focus on. After completing my plan at home, I knew it was time to take the next important step, booking transportation. This was not just a simple task. It required careful timing, smart choices, and a clear understanding of my budget. If I made the wrong decision here, it could affect the entire trip. I started by checking ticket prices every day. Instead of booking immediately, I observed the price fluctuations for a few days to find the most reasonable option. I realized that prices could change quite quickly depending on the time and demand. Because of that, I needed to be patient and make a well-informed decision. At first, I considered taking a flight because it would save time. However, when I compared the cost with my budget, I saw that it would take a large portion of my total expenses. Even though it was fast and convenient, it didn't feel like a sustainable choice for a budget trip. So I explored other alternatives, such as long-distance buses. The bus option turned out to be much more affordable and still relatively comfortable. It might take longer, but I saw it as a chance to relax and enjoy the journey in a different way. I chose a reputable bus company with good reviews, because safety was still one of my top priorities. Saving money did not mean accepting unnecessary risk. Once I found a suitable option, I didn't wait too long. I booked the ticket in advance to secure a better price. This decision gave me a strong sense of stability. Knowing that my transportation was confirmed helped me feel more in control of the entire trip. After booking, I made sure to store the electronic ticket carefully. I saved it on my phone, but I also kept a backup copy in my email. I even took a screenshot in case I needed quick access. These small actions might seem simple, but they helped reduce the risk of unexpected problems later. Then, I focused on something that many people often forget: how to get from the arrival point to the accommodation. I didn't want to arrive at the bus station and feel lost or confused. So I carefully researched the route from the station to my hostel. I checked maps, read travel forums, and looked at different transportation options. I found out which bus I should take, how long it would take, and how much it would cost. I also noted down alternative routes in case something didn't go as planned. This gave me a strong sense of security. In addition, I paid attention to the timing. I tried to choose a schedule that would allow me to arrive during the daytime. Arriving too late at night could be inconvenient and less safe, especially in a new place. By thinking ahead, I was able to reduce this risk and make my arrival smoother. As I organized all this information, I noticed that my confidence continued to grow. Each small step added to a bigger feeling of control. I was no longer worried about getting lost or making expensive mistakes. Everything was becoming clearer and more manageable. I also realized that booking in advance was not just about saving money. It was also about reducing stress. When things are arranged early, there is less uncertainty. I didn't have to rush or make quick decisions under pressure. Instead, I could focus on enjoying the experience. By the time I finished this step, my transportation plan was fully prepared. I knew exactly when I would leave, how I would travel, and how I would reach my accommodation. This level of clarity made the trip feel much more real. However, as I looked at my plan again, I understood that transportation was only one part of the journey. Even with everything booked and confirmed, I still needed to prepare myself properly for the trip. I needed to think about what to bring, how to pack efficiently, and how to make sure I had everything necessary without carrying too much. With that in mind, I turned my attention to the next step. Packing my luggage in a smart and practical way, making sure that every item I carried would support a smooth and comfortable journey. With my transportation fully arranged, I turned my attention to another essential part of the trip: packing. At first, it seemed like a simple task, but I quickly realized that packing without a clear plan could easily lead to unnecessary stress. If I packed too much, I would have to carry a heavy bag everywhere. But if I packed too little, I might find myself missing important items at the worst possible moment. To avoid that situation, I decided to approach packing in the same way I had planned the rest of the trip: carefully and systematically. I took a notebook and started making a checklist. Instead of randomly putting things into my bag, I listed everything I truly needed for the journey. This method helped me stay organized and prevented me from forgetting anything important. I began with the most essential items. My personal documents were the first priority. I made sure to prepare my identification, booking confirmations, and other necessary papers. Even though I had digital copies on my phone, I still kept physical copies in my bag. This gave me a sense of security in case my phone battery ran out or I couldn't access my files. Next, I focused on my electronic devices. My phone was obviously important, but I also needed a charger and a power bank. I knew that running out of battery while traveling could be very inconvenient, especially when I depended on my phone for maps and important information. So I made sure everything was fully charged and ready to use. Then, I carefully thought about my clothes. Instead of packing many outfits, I chose a few simple and versatile pieces that I could mix and match. This helped me reduce the weight of my luggage while still having enough options for different situations. I also checked the weather forecast for my destination, so I could pack clothes that were suitable and comfortable. Another thing I paid attention to was choosing reusable items. I brought a reusable water bottle and a small cloth bag for daily use. These items were not only practical but also more environmentally friendly. I wanted my trip to be responsible, not only in terms of budget but also in terms of impact on the environment. As I continued packing, I kept reviewing my checklist to make sure nothing was missing. At the same time, I also asked myself an important question: do I really need this item? If the answer was no, I removed it from my bag. This simple habit helped me avoid overpacking and kept everything efficient. I also organized my bag in a logical way. I placed frequently used items in easy-to-reach areas, while less important things were stored deeper inside. This made it easier for me to find what I needed without wasting time. A well-organized bag might seem like a small detail, but it could make a big difference during the trip. As the process continued, I began to feel more prepared and confident. Every item in my bag had a clear purpose. There was nothing unnecessary, and nothing important was missing. This balance gave me a strong sense of control and readiness. More importantly, packing this way helped me reduce potential risks. I didn't have to worry about forgetting something essential, and I didn't have to struggle with heavy luggage. Everything was simple, practical, and aligned with my original plan. When I finally finished, I took a moment to look at my bag. It wasn't big, but it contained everything I needed. At that moment, I felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. I knew I was ready, not just physically, but mentally as well. However, I also understood that real travel is never completely predictable. No matter how well I prepared, the actual experience could still be different from my expectations. But with everything planned and packed carefully, I believed I was ready to handle whatever might come. With my luggage prepared and my plan in mind, the journey was no longer something distant. It was about to begin. And soon, I would finally arrive at my destination and see how all my preparation worked in real life. The day of departure finally arrived, and everything I had planned started to become real. I woke up early, not because I was in a hurry, but because I wanted to begin the journey in a calm and organized way. There was no panic, no last-minute packing, and no confusion. Everything had already been prepared in advance, just as I had planned. As I left my house, I felt a quiet sense of confidence. I knew exactly where I was going and what I needed to do. My bag was light, my documents were ready, and my transportation had already been confirmed. This simple feeling of control made a big difference. Instead of feeling stressed, I felt focused and ready. The journey itself went smoothly. Since I had booked my ticket in advance, I didn't have to worry about availability or changing prices. I arrived at the station on time, followed the instructions I had saved, and found my seat without any difficulty. Everything felt familiar, even though it was the beginning of a new experience. During the trip, I had time to relax and observe my surroundings. I didn't feel anxious or uncertain, because I knew that the next steps were already planned. I checked my phone occasionally to review my route and arrival details, but mostly, I just enjoyed the journey. This was exactly the kind of experience I had hoped for, simple, peaceful, and under control. When I finally arrived at my destination, I didn't feel lost. Instead, I followed the plan I had prepared earlier. I already knew how to get from the station to my accommodation, so I didn't waste time searching for directions. I walked with confidence, checking my offline map when necessary, and everything matched the information I had saved. The streets felt new, but not overwhelming. Because I had done my research before, I had a general understanding of the area. I knew which direction to go and what to expect along the way. This made the whole experience feel much more manageable. After a short and smooth journey, I reached my accommodation. The place looked exactly like the photos I had seen online. The address was correct, the environment felt safe, and the check-in process was quick and simple. There were no unexpected problems, no confusion, and no stress. At that moment, I felt a strong sense of relief. All the preparation I had done at home was now proving to be useful. Instead of feeling tired and overwhelmed, I felt calm and comfortable. I didn't have to search for a place to stay or worry about my next step. Everything was already arranged. I took a few minutes to rest and settle in. I placed my belongings in an organized way, just as I had packed them. It was easy to find everything I needed, and I didn't feel any inconvenience. Even small details, like having my charger in the right place, made the experience smoother. As I sat down and looked around the room, I realized something important. Planning had not reduced the excitement of the trip. Instead, it had removed the stress and allowed me to focus on the experience itself. I could now enjoy the moment without worrying about basic needs or unexpected situations. Later, I checked my schedule for the next day. Everything was already outlined, but not too strict. I had enough structure to guide me, but also enough flexibility to enjoy the journey naturally. This balance made me feel even more comfortable. As the day slowly came to an end, I felt satisfied with how everything had gone. The arrival was smooth, the process was clear, and nothing felt overwhelming. It was exactly what I had hoped for when I first started planning this trip. But I also knew that the real experience was just beginning. The next few days would require me to manage my time and budget carefully. I needed to follow my daily routine, make smart choices, and continue staying within my plan. And that would be the next important part of my journey. The next morning, I woke up feeling refreshed and ready to begin my first full day. There was no pressure to rush, no confusion about what to do. Everything had already been planned in a simple and flexible way. I didn't need a strict schedule, but I had a clear structure to follow, and that made the day feel more manageable. I started my morning with a simple and affordable breakfast. Instead of looking for something expensive or trendy, I chose a small local place that I had already noted in my plan. The food was basic, but it was fresh, clean, and satisfying. More importantly, it fit perfectly within my budget. This was exactly the kind of practical choice I wanted to maintain throughout the trip. While eating, I took a few minutes to review my plan for the day. I didn't treat it like a fixed schedule, but more like a guideline to help me stay on track. I checked the locations I wanted to visit, the estimated costs, and the route between each place. This small habit helped me feel organized without feeling restricted. As I continued my day, I noticed how important it was to stay disciplined with my spending. It was easy to feel tempted by attractive shops or unexpected offers, especially in a new place. However, I reminded myself of my original budget strategy. Every decision I made had to be intentional, not impulsive. For lunch, I followed the plan again and went to a place that I had researched earlier. It was not a famous restaurant, but it was clean, affordable, and popular among locals. Choosing places like this helped me avoid unnecessary expenses while still enjoying authentic food. This balance between cost and experience became an important part of my daily routine. In the afternoon, I focused on visiting places that were either free or low cost. I walked through public parks, explored local streets, and visited simple attractions that didn't require expensive tickets. These activities were not only budget-friendly but also gave me a more genuine understanding of the place. I didn't feel like I was missing out. In fact, I felt more connected to the environment. Walking also became a key part of my routine. It allowed me to save money on transportation while giving me the chance to observe small details around me. I could stop anytime, take photos, or simply enjoy the atmosphere. This slow and mindful way of traveling made the experience feel more meaningful. As the day went on, I paid attention to my energy as well. Traveling is not only about money, it's also about maintaining a good physical and mental balance. When I felt tired, I took short breaks instead of pushing myself too hard. This helped me stay comfortable and avoid unnecessary stress. In the evening, I returned to my accommodation at a reasonable time. I didn't stay out too late or spend money on unnecessary entertainment. Instead, I chose to rest and prepare for the next day. This simple routine helped me stay consistent and avoid unexpected problems. Before going to bed, I reviewed my spending for the day. I compared it with my planned budget and made small adjustments if needed. This daily review was a very useful habit. It helped me stay aware of my expenses and prevented small overspending from becoming a bigger problem. As the days continued, this routine became more natural. I no longer had to think too much about every decision. The balance between planning and flexibility allowed me to enjoy the trip without losing control of my budget. I realized that managing money during travel was not about being strict or limiting myself too much. It was about making smart and conscious decisions. By following a simple routine, I was able to maintain both comfort and control. However, as I explored more of the city, I also began to think about how I was moving from place to place. Even though I had planned my daily routine carefully, transportation still played an important role in both safety and cost. And that naturally led me to focus on the next part of my journey, choosing the most efficient, safe, and environmentally friendly ways to travel within the city. As I continued exploring the city, I became more aware of how important transportation choices were in shaping my overall experience. It wasn't only about moving from one place to another. The way I traveled each day directly affected my budget, my safety, and even my level of comfort. Because of that, I decided to follow a simple principle: choose options that were both practical and responsible. Most of the time, I relied on public transportation. It was one of the most efficient ways to get around the city without spending too much money. Buses and local trains were easy to access, and they connected most of the places I wanted to visit. Before using them, I had already checked routes and schedules, so I didn't feel confused or lost. At first, using public transportation in a new city felt slightly unfamiliar. The system was different from what I was used to, and there were small details I needed to understand. However, because I had prepared in advance, I quickly adapted. I followed clear signs, observed how local people moved, and gradually became more confident. One thing I appreciated was how predictable the system was. Buses arrived on time, and routes were clearly organized. This made it easier for me to plan my day and avoid unnecessary delays. More importantly, the cost was very reasonable, which helped me maintain my daily budget without any pressure. In addition to public transport, I also walked a lot. Walking was not only free, but it also allowed me to experience the city in a more natural way. I could notice small details, explore quiet streets, and discover places that were not listed in any guidebook. This slow way of traveling made each day feel more personal and meaningful. However, I was always careful about where and when I walked. I chose safe areas, especially during the evening. I avoided empty or unfamiliar streets at night, even if they looked interesting. Safety was always more important than curiosity. This mindset helped me avoid unnecessary risks and feel more secure throughout the trip. Sometimes, when the distance was too far or I felt tired, I chose alternative options like short taxi rides or ride-hailing services. But I used them carefully and only when necessary. I always checked the estimated price before confirming the trip, making sure it was still within my budget. This balanced approach allowed me to stay flexible without losing control. Another thing I started to think about was the environmental impact of my travel choices. By using public transportation and walking instead of private vehicles, I was reducing my contribution to pollution. It might seem like a small action, but it felt meaningful. I realized that traveling responsibly was not only about money and safety, it was also about respecting the environment. As the days passed, this transportation routine became a natural part of my journey. I didn't feel stressed about moving around the city. Everything was simple, organized, and aligned with my plan. I could focus more on the experience itself instead of worrying about how to get from one place to another. There were also moments when I had to adjust my plans slightly. For example, if a bus was delayed or a route was temporarily unavailable, I didn't panic. Because I had already prepared alternative options, I could quickly choose another solution. These small adjustments didn't feel like problems, they were just part of the experience. Through this process, I learned that good transportation choices were not only about convenience. They were about creating a balance between cost, safety, and responsibility. By staying aware and making thoughtful decisions, I was able to keep my journey smooth and stress-free. As I continued traveling this way, I began to notice another important aspect of my daily life during the trip: what I ate and how it affected my energy. Even though I had already planned my meals, the real experience of eating in a new place brought new challenges and decisions. And that naturally led me to focus on the next part of my journey, finding a way to eat that was not only affordable, but also safe, healthy, and suitable for my daily routine. As I continued my journey, I began to realize that food was not just a daily necessity, it was also an important part of maintaining my energy and overall experience. Even though I had already planned my meals in advance, the reality of eating in a new environment required constant attention and thoughtful decisions. Each day, I tried to follow a simple principle: eat in a way that was both affordable and reliable. I didn't look for luxury or trendy places. Instead, I focused on small restaurants and local food stalls that appeared clean and well organized. Before choosing a place, I often took a moment to observe the environment. If it looked hygienic and had a steady number of customers, I felt more confident. One of the most useful habits I developed was avoiding places that were extremely cheap but seemed questionable in terms of quality. At first, it was tempting to choose the lowest price, especially when trying to save money. However, I quickly understood that food safety was not something I should compromise. Spending a little more for a clean and trustworthy place was a much better decision in the long run. I also paid attention to what I ordered. Instead of trying everything I saw, I made careful choices. I selected dishes that looked fresh, simple, and easy to digest. I avoided food that seemed too unusual or risky, especially if I wasn't sure about the ingredients. This approach helped me reduce the chance of feeling unwell during the trip. Another important part of my routine was staying hydrated. I always carried my reusable water bottle with me and made sure to refill it regularly. This small habit not only saved money but also helped me maintain my health. I didn't need to buy drinks constantly, and I could stay comfortable throughout the day. As the days passed, I noticed how much my food choices affected my energy. When I ate balanced and clean meals, I felt more active and focused. I could walk longer distances, explore more places, and enjoy the experience without feeling tired too quickly. On the other hand, I realized that unhealthy or heavy meals could slow me down and make the day less enjoyable. I also tried to keep my eating schedule consistent. I didn't skip meals or eat too late at night. Having a regular routine helped my body adjust to the new environment. It also made it easier for me to manage my daily plan without unexpected interruptions. There were moments when I felt curious about trying new dishes, and I allowed myself to explore, but in a controlled way. I didn't completely avoid new experiences, but I made sure they were safe and reasonable. This balance allowed me to enjoy local food while still protecting my health. In the evenings, I often chose simple meals and avoided eating too much. I wanted my body to rest properly so I could feel fresh the next day. This habit also helped me maintain a stable routine, which was very important during a multi-day trip. Over time, eating became more than just a part of my plan, it became a way to support my entire journey. Every small decision, from choosing a restaurant to carrying water, contributed to a smoother and more comfortable experience. I realized that traveling on a budget did not mean sacrificing quality or health. It simply required more awareness and smarter choices. By staying careful and consistent, I was able to enjoy my meals without worrying about my budget or my well-being. However, even with careful planning and good habits, not everything during a trip can be perfect. There are always small, unexpected situations that can happen along the way. The important thing is how we react to them. And as my journey continued, I began to face a few minor challenges, but thanks to my preparation, I was ready to handle them calmly and effectively. As my journey continued, I began to experience small problems that I hadn't fully expected. They were not serious, but they reminded me that no trip can ever be completely perfect. Even with a clear plan and careful preparation, unexpected situations are always part of the experience. One afternoon, while walking through a quiet area, I realized that I had taken the wrong street. At first, it felt slightly uncomfortable. The surroundings looked unfamiliar, and there were fewer people around than I had expected. However, instead of panicking, I paused and took a deep breath. Because I had already prepared offline maps and saved important locations, I was able to check my position quickly. Within a few minutes, I understood where I was and how to return to the correct route. It was a small mistake, but it didn't turn into a stressful situation. In fact, it gave me more confidence in my ability to handle similar problems. Another day, I started to feel a bit tired in the middle of my afternoon activities. The weather was warmer than I had expected, and I had been walking for quite a long time. Instead of pushing myself too hard, I decided to take a break. I found a quiet place to sit, drank some water, and allowed myself to rest. This decision made a big difference. After a short break, I felt refreshed and ready to continue. I realized that listening to my body was just as important as following my plan. A flexible mindset helped me stay comfortable and avoid unnecessary exhaustion. There was also a moment when I faced a small delay in transportation. A bus I planned to take arrived later than expected. In the past, this kind of situation might have made me feel anxious. But this time, I stayed calm. I already had alternative options prepared, so I quickly adjusted my plan. Instead of waiting too long, I chose a different route that I had noted earlier. It took a little more time, but it still worked well. The situation didn't affect my day in any serious way. It simply became a small adjustment within the larger plan. Through these experiences, I started to understand something important. The goal of planning is not to eliminate all problems. That would be unrealistic. The real purpose is to make sure that when problems happen, they can be handled easily. I also noticed that my mindset had changed compared to before the trip. I no longer saw small problems as obstacles. Instead, I saw them as normal parts of traveling. Because I had prepared carefully, I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt capable. Each small challenge became an opportunity to apply what I had planned. Whether it was using offline maps, checking saved information, or choosing backup options, every solution was already within reach. This made the entire journey feel more stable and less stressful. At the same time, I remained cautious. I didn't ignore potential risks, and I didn't become careless. I continued to follow my basic rules, staying in safe areas, managing my time properly, and keeping track of my budget. These habits helped me stay in control, even when things didn't go exactly as expected. As the days passed, I became more confident in my ability to adapt. I didn't need everything to be perfect. I only needed to stay calm, think clearly, and make practical decisions. This mindset made the trip much more enjoyable. Looking back, I realized that these small problems actually improved my experience. They helped me grow, learn, and become more independent. Without them, the trip might have felt too simple or less meaningful. And as my journey slowly moved toward its final days, I began to reflect on everything I had experienced, from careful planning to real-life situations. All these moments were connected, and they shaped the overall value of my trip. It was no longer just about reaching a destination or staying within a budget. It was about understanding how preparation, awareness, and flexibility could work together to create a smooth and meaningful journey. As my journey slowly came to an end, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened over the past few days. It was not just about the places I had visited or the photos I had taken. What stayed with me the most was the way the entire trip had unfolded. Calmly, smoothly, and without unnecessary stress. From the very beginning, I had made a clear decision to plan carefully. At that time, I wasn't completely sure if it would make a big difference. However, after experiencing the trip step by step, I could clearly see the results. Planning had helped me stay within my budget, avoid risky situations, and enjoy every moment in a more relaxed way. One of the most important lessons I learned was that planning does not limit freedom. In fact, it creates more freedom. Because I didn't have to worry about basic problems like transportation, accommodation, or daily expenses, I had more time and energy to focus on the experience itself. I could explore, observe, and enjoy the journey without feeling overwhelmed. I also realized that traveling on a budget does not mean having a poor experience. It simply requires a more thoughtful approach. By making smart decisions and staying aware of my choices, I was able to maintain a good balance between saving money and enjoying the trip. Every small decision contributed to the overall result. Another valuable lesson was the importance of preparation in reducing stress. When everything is planned in advance, there is less uncertainty. Even when small problems appear, they can be handled calmly because there is always a backup plan. This sense of control makes a big difference, especially when traveling alone. Looking back, I felt proud of how I managed the journey. I stayed disciplined with my budget, careful with my decisions, and flexible when needed. These qualities helped me turn a simple trip into a meaningful experience. More importantly, this journey changed the way I think about travel. I no longer believe that travel needs to be risky or unpredictable to be exciting. Instead, I understand that a well-prepared trip can be just as enjoyable, if not more. When everything is clear and organized, it becomes easier to focus on what truly matters. In the end, this trip was not only about visiting a new place. It was about learning how to travel in a smarter and more responsible way. It showed me that with the right mindset and preparation, even a limited budget can lead to a smooth, safe, and fulfilling journey. And as I packed my bag to return home, I knew that this was only the beginning. The experience I gained from this trip would guide me in my future travels, helping me make better decisions and create even better journeys ahead.